So this presentation makes the argument that agenda setting is increasingly shifting from traditional mainstream media institutions to algorithm-driven platforms run by Silicon Valley companies, particularly those utilizing recommender systems and LLMs. The presentation explores how these technologies are reshaping public discourse by driving content recommendation, influencing search algorithms, and determining what trends. The rise of new media as a primary news source, the evolving strategies of legacy media to retain audiences, and policies implemented by Silicon Valley companies are key factors to this transformation. This shift raises significant concerns regarding political polarization, misinformation, and a widening knowledge gap within the population. I'm going to show you a 1-minute clip of Grace Randolph. She runs a YouTube channel called Beyond the Trailer. She has a couple million followers. And this was her reaction to the just concluded American election. I'm using America because I think it's a perfect image of the polarization.
Because I don't want to put my head in the sand. The Republicans won. And I think that Twitter unfortunately reflected that. We were like, this can't be true. Elon Musk must have his finger on the scale. But yet he doesn't, because they won. So I think we just start to have looking at it differently. You know, you can't leave the town square just because you don't like who's in it. It's still the town square. But I think that we need to stop being so angry at each other, because it's not going to fix things. You know, we'll never move forward if we aren't nicer at each other. Thank you, Alex. Like, I can't believe Chris Pratt is like the voice of reason this morning. You're like, what the what? We'll talk about celebrities. But I will say that I think the mainstream news is donezo. Bye-bye, mainstream news. Because I don't want to...
Okay, and here are a couple of headlines, or a couple of YouTube titles. So, cable news bloodbath on election night after Trump wins podcast vote. How YouTube podcasts predicted the 2024 election. Yeah, and I think that shows a shift from the mainstream media towards an algorithmic type of media consumption. So why this shift? So I have 3 reasons. First, increasing use of new media over mainstream media, just sheer numbers. Secondly, new media features powered by recommender system. Who comes up first when you search something? What comment you see on your timeline? Who you see their post from? And then we have community guidelines and site policy. So we'll start with increasing use of new media over mainstream media. So in the US, traditional TV viewership continues to decline, with adults spending an average of 3 hours daily in 2024, a drop driven by the rise of on-demand streaming and mobile device usage. Younger generations increasingly prefer smartphone-based video streaming, while overall screen time remains high due to shifting media habits. A notable exception to this trend was in 2020 when COVID-19 spurred a temporary increase in traditional TV consumption. In Kenya, even though the story is a little different, but the trend is very similar. So 47% of respondents identified TV as their primary news source in 2023, while 22% reported not watching TV, especially younger, older, and rural individuals. Radio listenership declined slightly to 75% of the population, and digital media consumption rose to 52%, with platforms like Tuko, YouTube, WhatsApp dominating Kenyan smartphones. So the Kenyan smartphone users average 4 hours and 36 minutes daily. By the way, this is the 3rd highest screen time on the continent, and this surpasses the global average. But concerns about overuse, mental health, and trust in media persist as digital engagement grows. The rising number of internet users, coupled with a decline in those consuming traditional media, highlights the diminishing power of older, centralized media forms such as traditional television, newspapers, celebrities. I'm listing celebrities as a form of media because they are a product of the media, and broadcast radio. These traditional platforms are increasingly being supplanted by decentralized, user-driven digital channels. That is, of course, you can say traditional television is replaced by YouTube, newspapers by blogs, celebrities by influencers, radio by podcasts. So this shift in mediums results in fewer people engaging with mainstream outlets, leading to a narrower discourse on various topics, except for those that manage to resonate with the current trends and go viral on the new media platforms. This aligns with McLuhan's Understanding Media, emphasizing how the medium itself shapes public discourse and perception. I'm going to show you a minute video. This is Falki Sharma, a reporter for Vantage Point, and she's trying to make sense of the American results. I think we'll support the point I've just made.
Average age of cable news audience is 70 in America. Among newspaper readers, it is 60, the average age, and magazines, 52. What about podcasts? 34 years is the average age. So the trend is quite clear. Older Americans use newspapers and television, younger Americans use podcasts. Within this age group, men are a bigger share, and Trump realized this. Earlier this year, his campaign manager hired a 27-year-old consultant. His job? To make a list of podcasts for Trump to go on. Apparently, Trump wanted his son Barron to go through this list. And Barron is just 18 years old. He studies at New York University. So Trump wanted him, an 18-year-old, to vet the list. After that, it was a podcast blitz. Look at all the shows that he went on. The Nelk Boys podcast, Lex Friedman podcast, Bussin' with the Boys, Flagrant podcast, the Logan Paul podcast, the Theo Vaughn podcast, and finally, Joe Rogan. Together, these videos got 86 million views, and I'm only counting the full interviews. If you add shorter clips and snippets, it will be a lot more.
Okay, and also I think a point to note is the fact that it's not that mainstream organizations are also not online. Yeah, they are just not perceived the same as actual podcasts or actual online creators. They are still seen as organizations, as machines, yeah? And that makes a difference. So the second point, new media features powered by recommender systems. So recommender systems are designed to personalize content suggestions based on user preference, initially conceptualized by Resnick and Varian. These systems have evolved to become central feature of platforms like Amazon, Netflix, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, name any major social platform. It probably has a recommender system behind it. Yeah? Through advanced machine learning techniques, recommender systems aggregate data to tailor content, transforming how individuals interact with information online. As noted by Mark Zuckerberg, AI-driven content recommendation now accounts for more than 20% of what the users see in their Facebook and Instagram feeds, significantly altering the media landscape. I think if someone in the audience is a millennial, they'll remember a time when the first posts you saw on Facebook were the posts of your actual friends. Nowadays, you're more likely to see a post from a celebrity, an influencer, or content you enjoy in general. So Meta in their official website explained that they use multiple AIs on their features to determine content that users find useful and interesting. This effectively means that AI only shows you what it has determined as useful or things you would like to remove the choice or useful. And they would like to remove the choice to explore different content with the assumption you might dislike it. This is a huge contrast with mainstream media, where content is catered to appeal to a mass audience, and as a result, you are exposed to different point of views, ideas, and cultures. I know maybe someone may make the argument that, okay, still even the mainstream media itself is polarized there. So let's just use the American election, that let's say Fox News is very right-leaning and MSNBC is very left-leaning, but still, there's the need to fact-check, there's the need to do due diligence. So it makes it a little balanced. So in a TED Talk by Jack DeHaan, the concept of Nash equilibrium from game theory is used to explain why shops selling similar products tend to cluster together. According to this theory, businesses strategically position themselves to maximize their customer base by mirroring the location of competitors, which leads to a balance where no shop can improve its outcome by moving away. This same principle can be applied to recommender systems on digital platforms such as social media or streaming services. In these systems, algorithms optimize for user engagement by continuously refining content recommendation based on user preference and interactions. As a result, individual feeds often become dominated by similar types of content, reinforcing patterns of consumptions and creating an effect where similar media or information clusters are in one space, much like competing shops in a physical marketplace. This phenomenon not only influences user behavior, but also shapes the overall media landscape. By that I mean, you are also likely to see people in the comments or people who interact with the same content you watch, likely share the same values, the same location, the same something. So it affects the general media environment. So certain types of content gain more visibility and attention, crowding out alternative or diverse content, thus recommender systems, while also limiting exposure to a wider variety of information or media. The algorithm becomes the primary audience for creators and a pair of shades for the consumer. We see the world as we are, not as it is, but on steroids. So the third one is community guidelines and site policy. To enforce governance and regulate content, social media networks utilize community guidelines. These guidelines have consequences on what type of content and how the content is presented on sites. I think the best example for this is X. When it was Twitter and when it's X, the type of content that is pushed is quite different, and that just comes down to guidelines and site policies. So another example is after the Cambridge Analytica scandal in 2018, Facebook updated their policies to avoid any repetition of the event. These changes include the introduction of simplified privacy settings, a revamp of privacy menus, and updates to its terms and service. Additionally, Facebook introduced a new feature enabling users to access copies of their personal data. However, despite these modifications, the updates do not provide users with an increased control over the deletion of their data from the platform. Community guidelines and policies play a crucial role in shaping the discourse within online platforms, functioning as a form of agenda setting. By defining the acceptable boundaries of content and discussion, these guidelines create an overtone window. This is a range of ideas considered acceptable or mainstream, at least within the platform itself, within the digital community. As a result, content outside this window is restricted, whether through moderation or removal, thereby influencing not only what the users are allowed to discuss, but also shaping their perceptions of what topics are important, relevant, or worthy of consideration. In this way, the policies serve as gatekeepers, determining which issues and narratives dominate the conversation, effectively setting the agenda for the community's engagement. This parallels traditional media's role in highlighting certain topics over others, directing public attention, and framing the scope of permissible debate. So, the shifts of audiences towards new media platforms has compelled traditional mainstream media companies to adapt in order to remain relevant in this evolving landscape. Major outlets such as the BBC, CNN, New York Times, Citizen Television, and NTV in Kenya have established their presence on social media, no longer solely as content producers for mass audiences, but also as users on these platforms. McLuhan argued that the content of a new medium is always an old medium, and I think this is the tricky part. The mainstream space still thinks it's dominant, and it has been pushed to content. And because first you have the algorithm as the new media, the AI algorithms as new media. You have the old internet as the first content, and then the content of that internet is old television, or let's say if it's news, and let's say movies, as content of these new mediums. And then after that, you have, let's say, for news, you have newspapers. For televisions, for movies, maybe you have novels, yeah? And it goes on and on and on. This is a McLuhan idea. So as these mainstream media channels integrate into social media, they themselves become content, subject to the same recommender systems and community guidelines that govern user interactions. Instead of broadcasting to a broad and differentiated audience, they now cater to personalized algorithms that curate content based on individual user preference. This transformation shifts the media's primary audience from the public at large to the algorithms and systems that control content distribution, making the focus less about informing and educating and more about engaging users with content they are likely to enjoy. And of course, we have to understand that this is because you are more likely to see ads if you stay long on the platform. So this is a screenshot of BBC and how they are adapting to new media. This is not a TV screen. Yeah. And when, let's say, I'm on my Instagram feed, yeah, I'm likely to I'm not going to see all of these headlines. Yeah. I'm going to see one video that probably aligns with my political leanings. If it's Nation, the same. I'm seeing a whole story in an image, just the headline and an image. Yeah. And this shift changes the way media is consumed. People are no longer sitting in a sitting room discussing topics. So all the time you're having only information that agrees with you, yeah, at every moment, yeah, to make you stay long on the platform. And this is where things go wrong. I think, I know it's pessimistic, but I think this is where things go wrong. Yeah. So this shift has significant implications, not only for the nature of news, but also for the potential decline of mass media as we know it. The fragmentation of audiences and content could lead to increased polarization as individuals are exposed primarily to information that aligns with their existing beliefs. Furthermore, the rise of MDM has become a growing concern as it becomes easier for false or misleading content to spread rapidly through these platforms. This trend may also exacerbate discrimination and deepen the knowledge gap within the population as access to accurate and balanced information becomes more unevenly distributed. So let's look at a few examples of polarization, MDM, and knowledge in the real world. So the first example is the election violence in Brazil in 2018. So Ipsos blamed the recommender systems for the unprecedented levels of polarization for the 2018 elections in Brazil, with clashes witnessed in the streets. According to the article, algorithms contribute to discrimination by creating echo chambers that isolate users from diverse perspectives and reinforce existing beliefs. Jürgen Habermas' concepts of the public sphere has shifted to social network, which now serves as a critical platform for public discourse, opinion formation. Algorithms curate content based on users' virtual footprints, directing individuals towards information that aligns with their ideological biases while filtering opposing viewpoints. So, and then we have the second example is Myanmar, the Rohingya genocide. So between 2016 and 2017, Myanmar's military conducted extensive and systematic operations referred to as clearance operations, targeting the Rohingya minority group. During these operations, the military junta reportedly committed various atrocities, including mass murder, rape, looting, and forced deportation of the population. An exhaustive investigation by Amnesty International highlighted the role of Meta, then it was called Facebook, in facilitating the genocide against the Rohingya Muslim minority, revealing disturbing evidence. The final report stated the widespread distribution of messages promoting hatred and inciting violence against the Rohingya, along with other dehumanizing and discriminating content, exacerbated long-standing discrimination and significantly heightened the likelihood of large-scale violence. So, again, for US, the Republican extremists stormed Capitol Hill on January 6th because the then former president, now President Donald Trump, tweeted that the election was stolen. And it's strange because only the people who were likely to follow him saw the post. And this is something that is going to continue in the world. The more people stop using mainstream media or stop interacting with mainstream media channels. So in conclusion, the transition from mainstream media to algorithm-driven platforms has fundamentally reshaped the landscape of public discourse. While traditional media once played a central role in setting the agenda, today's AI-driven recommender systems have taken the reins, prioritizing user engagement and personalized content over broad-based information sharing. This shift has profound implications for political polarization, misinformation, and the widening knowledge gap, as individuals are increasingly exposed to content that reinforces their existing beliefs. To mitigate the risk associated with algorithm-driven media, it is imperative to develop robust regulatory frameworks that promote transparency, foster diverse perspectives, and address the ethical challenges posed by these technologies. And with that, I welcome discussions and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wait, you now we open the door for questions.
I don't say now.
I so sure I have many questions actually, but I want to ask a maybe stupid question because I've never really found out what actually is an algorithm. Is it like not? Is it code we use for a specific set of media forms that are like, for example, on Twitter they or X they talk about the algorithm, but what it actually is kind of a set of functions of the software, right? Like you can do quote beats, you can do specific ways of answering and so on. So is the algorithm, is it only this kind of sorting mechanism, which also I think works in various ways. And now we talk, for example, about these alternatives to Twitter, like Blue Sky or Mastodon, which are said to have no algorithms, which I don't think is really true. And so, the question is, what are we talking about when we talk about the algorithm? And the second question I have is, can you say something about moderation? Because a lot of the problems you described are problems that if you ask the people discussing social media, a lot of it comes back to moderation and how do we deal with moderation. I've been on Blue Sky for a while now, which is an interesting app because it gives you a lot of ways that you can moderate your own experience on the app. It has way more functions than, for example, Twitter even had before it became bought by Musk. To block people, to mute them, to kind of even kind of make your own algorithm in a way. So yeah, can you say something about moderation?
Okay, so I think first let me start with what is an algorithm. I don't think it's a stupid question because an algorithm initially it was a set of instructions, that leads to a specific outcome. However, with machine learning, and these sites have something they call online machine learning, so it keeps updating the instruction. Yeah, so if the site notices like you like dance videos, it's likely to recommend a dance video next. Yeah, if it feels you like political content, it's likely to recommend political content. So what happens? You find yourself you are only interacting with one type of content. Yeah, I think the difference between the old types of algorithms and the current algorithm, it's the fact that they are predictive algorithms. They predict what you want. Yeah, the other one was a set of instructions. That's why people used to make videos of how to get 1 million views on YouTube. Yeah, because it was easy to understand the process through which YouTube recommends the videos. Nowadays, it's very hard for someone to convince you that the system is very algorithmic based. Yeah. I hope I've answered that question, at least satisfactorily. Have I answered the question? At least the first one.
That's, I mean, my question is more metaphysical, maybe, but it's okay.
Oh, pardon. Okay. So if it was like that, okay, let me go to moderation. Yeah, maybe we can repeat the algorithm thing as we go on. Yeah. So on moderation, yeah, this is the issue. The moderation policies on the sites are determined by the policy of the site itself. Yeah. So the person who is moderating content, who is hired to moderate content, has to follow the rules of the site as their primary guide of moderation. Yeah. And it becomes difficult because this, like, let's say X is a private company. Yeah. Or you say something like Meta. Yeah. The Meta has values, organizational values. There are things that they stand by, the things that they can't allow on their platform. So it doesn't matter what the moderator thinks is right or wrong, but they are an employee of that company and they're expected to follow those moderation rules. Yeah, and I think that's where moderation goes wrong. When you talk about, let's say, Blue Sky and your ability to customize the experience, yeah, I think it still runs into the same issue. Yeah? Because the algorithm will customize your experience for you. And I think for Blue Sky, because of it's relatively new, it's something they call a cold start problem. Yeah, it's the same as, let's say, Amazon, where they ask you which artists do you like, or Apple Music. Which artists do you like? And then they're able to recommend music from those artists first, and then your playlist becomes diverse with the same type of music, weirdly. But I think it's a cold start problem, so they're trying to find out what do we show you so that you can enjoy your experience on the platform. The problem with that is you only see things you enjoy. You never hear alternative opinions. I think that's what I'd say. Yeah.
I always liked Medellin for the very plastic metaphors he used, and I think especially with the with content on the platform on platforms, I think again that this temperature metaphors of him really came to my mind during our talk. That it's not so much even about content you enjoy, but content that generates the most metaphorical heat, because of the interaction between user and the provided content, which in and of itself must not be particularly enjoyable for the user. I think quite to the contrary. And I think that's also like everyday evidence that everyone can attest to, that you tend to spend even more time interacting with things on platforms that tend to annoy you rather than things be enjoyable. And I think that seconds a bit the question about algorithms, but in a more general sense. I think that much conversation about platform media is kind of obfuscated by marketing language, by exactly these platforms. Something like the algorithm is a bit like the magical black box that is like the genie in the bottle. That is exactly why that is so obfuscated, is I think overestimated in its reach and its usability, and underestimated in its effects. Another example, I think, is the talk about quote unquote AI. That's everything that has to do with large language modules or diffusion models to generate images is called AI, which also again is more like marketing speak and has not so much to do with like what you would think about if you hear the term AI. Do you think there are like feedback loops with on the one hand like these temperature metaphors of Lewin, and this obfuscation of the inner workings of the platforms we interact with?
Okay, let's start with the temperature metaphor. Yeah, I think the definition of enjoyable comes. I don't know. I like by something that brings a lot of feature. I think that's a very Twitter thing. Yeah, but when let's say you go to YouTube, yeah, and the video is a little longer. A video is 3 hours. A podcast is 3 hours. Yeah, you are not going to want to feel the heat for 3 hours. You're more likely to choose something that calms you down, something more enjoyable. But on Twitter, it's good because it's good for engagement. It's a microblogging platform. Yeah, we have to remember that that's what it was originally. Yeah, so the heat is important to keep the platform going. Yeah, and I don't think the algorithms are overestimated. Like, okay, algorithm AI, okay, it's fine. There's a meme I saw that people used to call it statistics, then they called it machine learning. Now they are calling it AI, right? But I think it's not overestimated. Yeah, I think the problem is it has become more invisible. Yeah, you don't actually experience it. It's an invisible technology. Yeah, and that's the problem. It's something that some people may call a psychotechnology to some extent. Yeah, you know it's there, but you don't see it, so you don't think about it. When you tweet, or I don't know what it's called on X now, but when you tweet, yeah, you are not thinking you are tweeting to an algorithm. That's what I was saying, that the algorithm becomes your first audience, right? Because it decides who gets your content. Yeah. So it's your first audience. Yeah. So when you tweet, you don't think you're tweeting to the algorithm, but really you are tweeting to the algorithms for it to show it to an audience, not your audience, an audience in general. Yeah. So I think it's not overestimated. And I think because of its invisibility, it becomes dangerous. Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
Uh, Two things. One, with social media, did a kind of like analytical study on that a while ago. I feel like social media is just general like horrible for political discourse, just on so many levels. It's pretty good to like organize like groups. Like if you already have a community that is polarized about an issue, it's good to organize that. But if you like, there's still an but like the stage an open discourse, it's very bad for that on many levels. Going back to the moderation thing, something that you didn't really touch on as far as as far as I noticed, was corporate interest, where a lot of time moderation is not necessarily dictated by the algorithm window directly, but rather by what do advertisers feel comfortable with having their products be presented next to. So that is one reason why like a lot usually hate speech is regulated, because it looks bad to advertise your thing next to hate speech, and then the advertisers pull away and the platform loses money. So there's this balance of, okay, at the one hand, they want the populism, they want the radicalization, they want the rabbit holes to keep the users engaged. On the other hand, they can't push it too far, or else they will lose the advertisement. But then during the American election, this got pushed a little bit further by like next level cohort interest, basically, when Elon Musk bought Twitter and turned it into basically an alt-right platform and made it very advertiser unfriendly. A lot of advertisers left the platform, but Musk said, I don't care, and I'm the richest man in the world. So I guess that's the thing. And there was also the thing that Jeff Bezos directly intervened, and I think it was the New York Times he bought, which would have brought out a public open recommendation to vote for Kamala Harris, but Jeff Bezos said, no, we are not going to do this time. He bought it. This was the first election when the newspaper was owned by Bezos, and this was the first time that they didn't speak out in a recommendation. And yeah, I feel like this intermingling of like pushing the algorithm, like there's this statement which I really enjoy, that algorithms, or that like algorithms is basically money laundering for biases, and on multiple levels in terms of corporate interest, I feel that that's very true. Of like, okay, we hack the Overton window with advertisement, but then also we have the billionaires who very directly and immediately want to pursue their own interests.
Okay. On the, I think again on the Overton window, I think what I actually meant, you've brought up a very good point, yeah, where the corporate interests also affect how wide the Overton window might be, yeah. But I was meaning like the policies themselves become the boundary, yeah, because these policies have already taken into account the business aspect of it, yeah. But in the case of X in this situation, it seems the goal was different. Yeah, the goal was not economic; it was political. So it becomes completely different. I think it still fits, it still defines the Overton window on X, but we just assumed that the goal will always be economics, but it's not. Yeah, I don't know if you had any other question, but maybe I didn't understand the question.
I mean, you put it in a way. It's basically this correlation of the more like we are moving into it. I mean, we were always there, but now it becomes once again very obvious of how economic power translates into power to shift popular discourse or public discourse and the Overton window, where Elon Musk has now, since now that he's owning Twitter, he has a very immediate effect on the Overton window, which we do notice.
Okay, thank you. I think. Any more questions, discussions?
Moses, thank you very much for your presentation. We will follow by a short coffee break and then our wrap-up session. So thank you very much, Moses.
Thank you.